I paid $100 for this broken Xbox Series X that one of my viewers tried to fix themselves and unfortunately was not successful. I don't know if all the parts are here. Let's get it out of the box and check it out. This video is sponsored by BW100. More on them in a minute. So we have the main case here and it's kind of heavy, so there's something still in there. Hey, they packed it with paper towels. That's awesome. Nice packing job. We have the board, one of the boards. So, I mean, that's good. I already see an issue with the HDMI port. And here we have the other part of this sandwich. Okay, and we got the other board. That's good, the other main board. And then we've got this board here. That's also good. What do we have here? This feels like it must be the fan. Also packed in paper towels. That's great. The fan, and we got the little stand, and then the other little board. Okay, cool. So I think maybe we might have all the parts here. Let's open up the back of it here and make sure the disk drive is included. Okay, paper towels. Oh yeah, disk drive. I forgot about the power supply. I'm glad they included that. And we got the disk drive. That's good. Okay, we are getting quite the puzzle to assemble here, but I think we can do it. Now this is my kind of puzzle. But first we have to figure out what's wrong and if we can fix it. So we need to look at this port, but let's get the rest of this thing apart first. Should just have this clamp. Oh, these things are tight. That's not necessary. Must have used a very large screwdriver or power tool to put these things in. Definitely too tight. And with the clamp off, we should be able to inspect the thermal paste. And also this whole board, I gotta make sure this thing's in good condition. The heatsink has been damaged right there. I'm not sure why or what happened there. Also, this board is like, there's nothing holding it on. It's just stuck down pretty good. Maybe from the perfect amount of thermal paste. Nah, probably not. It feels like it's glued down. I'm sure it's not, but that's what it feels like. That doesn't sound or feel normal. Oh, wow. Okay. What is going on here? Nothing? I mean, these were definitely stuck down, but shouldn't have been on there that tight unless, I mean, I wonder if they tried to replace this port without removing this part, so this is just all right from the factory. I guess it also was screwed down really, really tight. That might not really matter that much because the screws go down onto these posts, so it can only put so much pressure on the board, but that was just on there really tight. Okay, I'm gonna stop complaining about that and let's look at this HDMI port and let's get under a microscope so we can really take a good look at it. Before we get under the microscope, I just wanted to show you why this port needs to be replaced. I don't know if this was the original problem or not, but it's definitely a problem. It's kind of like wavy in there, so there's no way a cable would plug into that with a good connection. Okay, and here we are on the board. We've got the HDMI chip right here. We got a bunch of flux residue there we'll need to clean off. And it doesn't look too bad yet, but when we look at the pins, you can definitely see a major problem here. I can't tell if any of the pads have been torn off of the board, so we'll have to look at that once we get this port out. So let's do that now, and then we can inspect the board and see if there's anything going on we need to take care of. In order to remove this port, I'm going to heat it from the bottom using my hot air soldering station. I have my hot air station set at 1100 degrees Fahrenheit and an airflow of 3. It takes a lot of heat to remove these HDMI ports as this is a very thick board with very big ground planes. So if you don't have a quality hot air station, then this can be a very difficult or impossible job. I'm going to use my hot air station to go around all 4 mounting posts, but also in between the mounting posts, there is 19 small pins on the back, and then some pins that connect to the board on the front as well. Once the port gets hot enough, it will simply drop out. And now with that port out, it's a great time to get this flux cleaned up. Flux is much easier to clean up once the board is warm or once the flux is warm. A bunch of little fibers got caught in these diodes back here. Okay, that's looking much better. So this is a close-up of the old port, and it is totally just smashed up or bent up inside, not really smashed. Oh, there we go, now we can reuse it. Just kidding. It is in pretty bad condition. In the back, it's actually not too bad. You can see these are all the pins that were soldered together back here. Is that a circuit trace? That might be a circuit trace. I don't know. Let's look at the board and see if we got a broken trace. So overall, things don't look too bad. We've got some solder bridges we need to remove. After we get that removed, then we can inspect the pads and see if there's anything going on there. What is this? This doesn't look to be a problem. So no problems there. This guy might have a problem. We'll have to look at that later, if I remember. If we start this thing up and it doesn't work, then we'll have to look at this. Actually, I don't think that will make it not work. So we should be good. So I'm going to add some flux to this solder. Then I'm going to suck up the excess solder and then we can inspect the pads. So let's flux it up. There we go. Fume extractor on. Instead of sucking that up, I'm actually going to use my large iron and just spread it around because we need to tin these pads anyway. Okay, and I see no issues on any of these pads or circuit traces, so we should be good to go there. Next, what I need to do is tin the pads on the port. So this is the replacement HDMI port. It is looking good inside there. All the plastic is intact and the pins are intact, but this is what these ports look like when they are not installed on the board. So the main things we need to worry about is making sure that these mounting pins go through the holes on the board and are mounted securely. And then each of these 19 small pins in the back need to securely mount to the 19 pads that are on the board. So we've tinned the pads on the board. That just means I've added a little bit of fresh solder. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the port. So I'll just take some flux and flux it up. Got some fresh solder on my large soldering iron. And now I'll just go over these pins. So you can see that the solder is starting to kind of stick a little bit. One thing that helps that is more flux. More flux helps almost any issues you're having with soldering. All right, and with more flux, all of those little sticking points are gone. Now we have some nice fresh solder on those pins, and this port is ready to install on the board. So I have the board upside down, and what I'm going to do next is heat up this same area of the board until all of this solder in the mounting pins is fluid, and then I will use my tweezers to come through and push the port pins, the mounting pins from the port up through these holes, and that will mount the port into the board. Then I'll keep pressure there while I remove the heat, and then once the solder has solidified, I can remove my tweezers and the port will be installed. But then we need to check the small pins on the back and make sure those are all aligned and soldered on properly. All right, and those are aligned very nicely. Let's check each pin to make sure it is soldered on. I probably will come through and resolder these just to make sure. But let's double check them. Oh, little movement there. Yep, got some movement there. It's definitely some there. Okay, and some there. So I'm going to come through and resolder all of these with my soldering iron. And I will just ensure these are all soldered on very nicely and solidly. Now we'll come through with our small soldering iron and touch up each one of these pins. All right, now let's clean this all up and have a look again. And I bridged a joint that I didn't even see. Good thing we were cleaning that up and noticed that one. Okay, good. Now that looks really nice. Also, looking back at those little diodes, other than having a bunch of cotton swab hair on them that I need to clean up, those actually all look great, so I don't think there's a problem there. Unless we have another problem with one of the chips on the board, this Xbox is ready to be put all back together, and then we can see if it actually works. But first, of course, we need to apply the perfect amount of thermal paste. And there we go. And with the perfect amount of thermal paste applied, we can get this part on, just like that. And now the clamp. The seller seemed to do a pretty good job overall of getting this thing apart. These ribbon cables were in pretty good condition. The connectors weren't bent or broken. Definitely could have done better, but overall, really not too bad. I wonder if there's anything else wrong with this than the HDMI port. Everything else I've seen looks good, but who knows? You never know when you get stuff like this. And now just the back cover. Okay, let's see if it'll start up and see if we get a picture on the screen. Let's turn it on. Well, see if it turns on and then see if we get anything on the screen. Startup noise, good. White light. No fan yet. Okay, disk drive makes noise, good. Oh, I feel a fan. So it's starting up, nothing on the screen yet. Let's check our HDMI cable. Okay, after all of that work, it's still not working. I was pretty sure it was gonna, but unfortunately it's just not. So we got to get this thing back apart and figure out what's going on with this HDMI signal. And here we are back under the microscope. These guys are good. I don't see any problems there. This chip could be faulty. I don't see any problems visually, but it still could be faulty. These guys are not likely bad. Let's flip it over and take a look at the booster. And that's definitely a problem. This thing is broken. There's a scratch over here on the board, so it looks to me like something scraped against this and totally broke this piece of the booster off. Now, I don't know for sure if that will cause a no signal problem. Also, what's this? I don't know what... Oh, that's the piece of the booster that broke off right there. Okay. Interesting. So, first thing we're going to do is replace this booster because it's clearly bad. As I was saying, I don't know whether this being broken like this will cause a no signal, but it wouldn't surprise me if it could. So clearly the first thing we need to do here is get this booster replaced. And once again, I'll be using my hot air soldering station to replace the booster. So here's the old one. You can see that corner is just totally broken off. You can see all these little solder balls are what connect to the solder pads on the board right here. So we will remove this one. Now I do have a new chip that has the solder balls already installed. So what we need to do next is clean off the solder balls from the board and any of this excess broken chip material here. Get that out of here. So what I'm going to do is use a hot soldering iron and some solder wick, and I'm just going to come through and just wick up all the excess solder off of these pads. And then once that's done, I can align the new chip and then heat up the new chip until the solder balls melt, and that will connect it to the pads on the board. Now I'm starting with my wand pretty high up. That's just going to get everything warm, and then as things warm up, I'm going to move down closer and closer. And as I get closer, that'll really help this chip, help the solder on the chip melt. Oh, there we go, it's already melting. Now I want to make sure that the chip, that all the solder balls are melted, so I'm going to come in and nudge it a bit. Oh, you can see it kind of went out of place. So let's nudge it back. It tells me that not all the solder balls are melted. Maybe none of them are. I thought it was, but definitely was not. Okay, now let's try the nudge test again. Yep. Now when I came in and nudged it, you saw it move and then it kind of snapped back into place. That tells me that all the solder balls are melted and connected to the board. Now that looks much better. We have this chip replaced. I've got it all cleaned. And speaking of cleaning, BW100 is one of my favorite electronic contact cleaners. It's plastic safe, non-flammable, and evaporates super quickly. So whether I'm cleaning flux off the board, like on this board, I can use it to clean off all this excess flux, and you can see how fast it evaporates. Super quick. One of the things that's great about BW100 versus things like isopropyl alcohol is that it evaporates super quickly. Depending on the concentration of IPA, it can take a while to evaporate, and if it's a low concentration of IPA to water, then it can get under BGA chips and possibly cause a problem. With BW100, that doesn't happen. It can go under any of these BGA chips, and it'll still evaporate very quickly. The other thing that's great about this is it's non-flammable. IPA is very flammable, and BW100 is not flammable at all. So I never have to worry about this catching on fire when I'm using it. BW100 is safe for plastics, rubber, and metal, and you can use it on basically any electronic device. So whether you have analog sticks that need to be cleaned, or if you have a motherboard or logic board that you need to clean, BW100 is great for that. If you want to get some for yourself, I'll put a link right in the description that'll take you right there. So now the question is whether I test any more of the circuit or whether we just put it back together and see if it works. I'm pretty sure that's the only problem here. This chip definitely could be a problem. Let's just do a quick test on that and see if there are any shorts around it. So there are some shorts, but they are on pins that are normally shorted. So I don't see any problems with this chip. Now, just because there aren't shorts doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good chip, but it likely is. So I think I'm going to take a chance and get this thing back together and see if it works now. So let's see if it'll start up and show something on the screen after the second repair attempt. Here we go. Power. Black screen. Look at that. Already we got it. So for $100, this Xbox Series X was a pretty good deal, and the person who tried to fix it before me actually didn't do too bad of a job. I think they probably just didn't have the right tools to do the job. If you like this type of video, you'll probably like the video where I fixed a special edition Xbox Series X. I'll put that video up on your screen now so you can come hang out with me over there and see if I was able to fix it. Thanks so much for watching today. Don't forget to get some BW100 for yourself by going to the link in the description, and I hope you have a good one.